Welcome back to Diana's Diaries, friends. I'm so glad you're here as we dig a little deeper into this story of mine. Last time I told you about that quiet evening when something started stirring, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Well, today we're picking up right where we left off. Life has a way of sneaking up on you, doesn't it? One minute you're fine, and the next, you're feeling things you didn't expect. That's how it was for me as the days went on after Henry showed up. So, let's settle in and see where this road takes us next. Morning came after that restless night, and I dragged myself out of bed with the sun barely peeking over the Tennessee hills. Robert was already up, sipping coffee at the kitchen table, flipping through the paper. I put on my best smile, poured myself a cup, and tried to act like everything was normal. "Sleep okay?" he asked, glancing up. "Oh, fine enough," I lied, stirring sugar into my coffee. The kids tumbled downstairs, all noise and energy, and I busied myself with breakfast, eggs, toast, a little routine to keep my hands moving and my mind off Henry. But he was there, wasn't he? Henry came down a bit later, his hair still damp from a shower, and settled at the table with a quiet "mornin'." I nodded back, keeping my eyes on the skillet, but I could feel him across the room. It was like he'd brought something with him, an air I couldn't ignore. Robert chatted about his day at the hardware store, the kids bickered over the last piece of bacon, and I kept my head down, pretending I wasn't noticing Henry's every move. But I was. The way he held his mug, the soft grunt he made when he stretched. Little things that stuck with me more than they should have. Robert headed out after breakfast, off to open the store, and the kids grabbed their backpacks and bolted for the school bus. The house went still, just me and Henry left behind. I stood at the sink, washing dishes, the hot water stinging my hands, and told myself to get a grip. "He's just Robert's dad," I muttered under my breath. "Nothing more." But the quiet wasn't helping. I could hear Henry moving around, his boots on the hardwood, the creak of the recliner as he sat down, and it was like the walls were closing in, pushing us closer than I wanted. I tried to keep busy, folded laundry, swept the porch, anything to drown out that nagging pull. But every so often I'd catch a glimpse of him, out the window as he stepped outside to check the mailbox, or through the doorway when he passed by with a glass of water. And every time he'd look back, his eyes catching mine for just a second too long. It wasn't bold or flashy, just steady, like he was waiting for something. My heart would jump, and I'd turn away quick, cheeks warm, scolding myself for acting like some fool schoolgirl. The day dragged on like that, a slow dance of avoiding and noticing all at once. I'd hear him humming an old tune in the living room, or the rustle of the newspaper as he turned a page, and it'd pull me right back. By afternoon, I was out in the yard, raking leaves to clear my head. The breeze was cool, the hills stretching out golden and brown, but my thoughts kept circling to Henry. Why was he sticking around longer than usual? He'd said something about a break from work, but it felt off, like there was more he wasn't saying. Supper came around, and we sat down again. Robert back from the store, the kids chattering about school. Henry was there, same spot at the table, and I tried to focus on cutting my chicken, laughing at Robert's stories. But it was like Henry's presence was a magnet, pulling my attention no matter how hard I fought it. After the kids went to bed, we ended up in the living room again. Robert flipped on the TV, some old western flickering across the screen, and I curled up on the couch with a blanket. Henry sat in the armchair, quiet as always. But I could feel his eyes on me, like a soft weight I couldn't shake. I tried not to look, kept my gaze on the TV, but it was no use. Every time I glanced over, there he was, watching me with that calm, steady look. It wasn't pushy or loud, just there, tugging at me. My hands fidgeted with the blanket, my mind racing. What's wrong with you, Diana? I thought. This is crazy. But crazy or not, it was real. And it was growing, slow and steady, like a river carving its way through stone. Later that night, after Robert turned in, I stayed up, claiming I needed to finish some knitting. Truth was, I couldn't sleep. Not with Henry still downstairs, not with that feeling buzzing under my skin. I sat on the couch, needles clicking, but my eyes kept drifting to the stairs. I heard him moving down there, soft steps, the clink of a glass, and my chest tightened. Part of me wanted to go down, just to see, just to know. But I stayed put, telling myself it was nothing, that I'd wake up tomorrow and it'd all be gone. It didn't go away. The next day was more of the same. Robert off to work, kids at school, me and Henry alone in that big, quiet house. I was in the kitchen, scrubbing a pot when he came in. He didn't say much at first, just leaned against the counter, watching me. I could feel his gaze like a warm hand on my back, and my scrubbing slowed. "Need anything?" I asked, keeping my voice light, my eyes on the sink. "Just a glass of water," he said, low and easy, but he didn't move to get it. He just stood there, close enough that I could smell the faint scent of his soap. Clean, simple, him. I turned to grab a glass, my hands shaky, and when I handed it to him, our fingers brushed. It was nothing, just a second, but it hit me like a jolt, warm and sharp all at once. I pulled back quick, turning to the sink, but I could feel him still there, watching. "Thanks, Diana," he said, and there was something in his voice, a little hitch maybe, that made me freeze. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak, and he lingered a moment longer before walking out. My heart was pounding, loud enough I swore he could hear it, and I gripped the edge of the sink to steady myself. That evening, it all came to a head. Robert was in the living room talking about some order mix-up at the store, and the kids were asleep. Henry and I were there too, me on the couch, him in that darn armchair, and the air felt thick, thicker than it had been before. I tried to focus on Robert, nodding at the right spots, but Henry's presence was everywhere. I could feel it in every breath, every heartbeat, pulling me like a tide I couldn't fight. Then it happened. Robert stepped out to take a call, leaving us alone. The room went quiet, just the crackle of the fire and the hum of the TV. I didn't dare look at Henry, but I knew he was looking at me. I could feel it, heavy and sure. "Diana," he said, soft as a whisper, and I flinched, my head snapping up. He was closer now, standing by the couch, his eyes locked on mine. They were deep, full of something I couldn't name, something that made my breath catch and my hands tremble. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but nothing came out. We just stood there, staring, the space between us shrinking without either of us moving a step. In that moment, I knew it wasn't just in my head. Whatever this was, it was real, and it was growing, too big to ignore, too strong to push away. Henry didn't say another word, just held my gaze, and I felt it all. The pull, the fear, the want, crashing together like a storm rolling in. I didn't know what came next, but I knew one thing. This wasn't going away, and neither was I. That's where it left me, folks, standing there, caught in something I couldn't outrun. It wasn't loud or fast, but it was there, building slow and steady. We'll pick up next time on Diana's Diaries and see what happened when that storm finally broke. What do you reckon? Share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear 'em.